My name is Claire, and I've spent 6 months planning my best friend's perfect bridal shower. 6 months of my life dedicated to someone who just called me too basic to my face. Too basic? After everything I've done? You know what? I'm done being everyone's doormat. I'm done giving and giving until there's nothing left.
And Melissa?
After what you said today, I promise you'll remember this bridal shower for the rest of your life. You wanted something less basic? Well, be careful what you wish for. Before we continue, if you enjoy stories about wedding drama and friendship betrayals,
Make sure to click that subscribe button.
this is the best way for you to support our work.
Thank you very much, and let's continue.
It all started 14 months ago when Melissa squealed over FaceTime, flashing her 3-carat diamond engagement ring. We'd been friends since freshman year of college, 12 years of friendship. I was the constant shoulder she cried on through 3 messy breakups, the friend who helped her move apartments 5 times, and the one who nursed her through that horrible bout of food poisoning after her Thailand trip.
He proposed.
She screamed, her mascara already running.
Claire getting married.
I felt that familiar mix of joy in the tiniest, most shameful pinch of envy. At 34, I was still single while Melissa had found James, a cardiothoracic surgeon with kind eyes and a beach house in the Hamptons. But I pushed those feelings aside because that's what best friends do.
I'm so happy for you.
I said, genuinely meaning it despite that small ache. Tell me everything. What followed was a 2-hour conversation about how James had arranged a private dinner on a rooftop overlooking the Manhattan skyline,
Complete with a string quartet and rose petals. Classic Melissa.
Her life always seemed like something out of a romantic comedy. Claire, she said, suddenly serious. You know you're my maid of honor, right? I couldn't do this without you. The words filled me with pride. Of course I would be her maid of honor. I'd been preparing for this role since we made a pact in our dorm room, drinking cheap wine and promising to be there for each other's big days.
I would be honored.
I said, already mentally planning everything I could do to make her wedding journey perfect.
The next morning, a massive bouquet of peonies, my favorite flowers, arrived at my apartment with a handwritten note.
To my maid of honor, I can't wait to share this journey with you.
Love, Melissa.
It was thoughtful, and so typically Melissa to make grand gestures.
That was the thing about our friendship. She had always been the shining star.
And I had always been the reliable supporting character. I didn't mind my role.
At least, I didn't think I did.
The first few months of wedding planning were a whirlwind of excitement. Melissa created a wedding planning group chat with her other 4 bridesmaids,
Her sister Jessica,
her cousin Taylor,
and our college friends Zoe and Rachel.
I knew Jessica and Taylor well enough, but I had lost touch with Zoe and Rachel over the years as they moved to opposite coasts. The chat quickly filled with hundreds of messages daily.
Melissa shared Pinterest boards,
Wedding dress options and ideas for the bachelorette party. I diligently responded to every message, offered opinions when asked.
and began saving money.
Being a maid of honor isn't cheap.
And I knew that Melissa's taste ran expensive.
3 months into the engagement, we all met for brunch at an upscale restaurant in Tribeca to officially kick off wedding planning. It was my first time seeing Zoe and Rachel in years. They both looked amazing, successful, polished, and confident. Zoe was now a marketing executive for a luxury brand, while Rachel had started her own interior design business in Los Angeles. I felt immediately self-conscious in my department store dress and sensible shoes. I'm a 3rd-grade teacher,
And while I love my job,
it doesn't come with the salary or glamour of their careers.
Claire, Zoe hugged me tight. It's been forever.
You look exactly the same. I wasn't sure if that was a compliment,
Did she mean I hadn't aged?
or that I hadn't evolved. The mimosas flowed as Melissa held court, describing her vision for a Tuscan-inspired wedding at a vineyard in the Hudson Valley. The wedding was set for June, 14 months from then, giving us plenty of time to plan. Or so I thought.
So clear.
Jessica turned to me while Melissa was in the bathroom. What are you thinking for the bridal shower? I know it's early, but Venice book up fast.
I was thinking maybe a garden tea party theme?
I suggested. Melissa has always loved flowers and outdoor gatherings. Jessica and Taylor exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret.
That sounds nice.
Taylor said diplomatically.
Very traditional.
When Melissa returned, the conversation shifted. But a seed of doubt had been planted. Was my idea too traditional?
Too simple? Too basic?
Later that night, Melissa called me. Hey, so about the bridal shower, she began. I love the garden tea party idea, but let's make sure it's elevated, you know? Something Instagram worthy. Of course, I assured her. I was thinking we could rent out that beautiful conservatory at the Botanical Gardens. We could have custom tea blends, finger sandwiches, and maybe a string quartet.
That sounds perfect,
She exclaimed. I knew I could count on you, Claire.
The next few months passed in a flurry of wedding planning activities.
We went dress shopping, where Melissa found a stunning gown that cost more than 3 months of my rent.
I helped her assemble and address 200 save-the-date cards, researched florists, and accompanied her to cake tastings.
Meanwhile, I was quietly researching bridal shower venues. The conservatory at the Botanical Gardens was available,
but came with a hefty rental fee. Still, I wanted the best for Melissa.
I put down the deposit using a significant chunk of my savings, telling myself it was worth it for my best friend. I created detailed spreadsheets for the bridal shower.
Guest list, menu options, decor ideas, games, and party favors.
I spent evenings after long days of teaching crafting personalized invitations,
Sourcing vintage teacups from thrift stores,
and designing a signature cocktail named after Melissa and James. 7 months into the engagement, the bridesmaids met again, this time at Jessica's apartment, to discuss the bachelorette party. Zoe had taken the lead on planning a 5-day trip to Tulum, Mexico. The beachfront villa alone is $800 per person, Zoe explained, showing us photos of an admittedly gorgeous property.
Then we have the private chef for 2 nights, the yacht day, the spa treatments. I felt my stomach drop as she continued listing expenses.
The total would be close to $3,000 per person, not including flights. On my teacher's salary, with the money I'd already spent on the bridal shower venue, this would mean dipping into my emergency fund.
I started hesitantly.
That looks amazing, but is there any way we could maybe cut some costs? Maybe skip the private chef or find a less expensive villa?
The room went quiet.
Melissa looked at me, with a mixture of surprise and disappointment.
Claire,
She said gently,
I know it's a lot,
but this is a once-in-a-lifetime celebration.
if it's really a problem, I could help you out a bit.
My cheeks burned with embarrassment. The last thing I wanted was financial hope from the bride. No, I backpedaled quickly.
I'll make it work.
It looks incredible, Zoe. The conversation moved on, but I felt a subtle shift in the room's energy.
For the first time,
I felt like an outsider in my own friend group,
the poor teacher.
who couldn't keep up with their lifestyle.
That night,
I transferred money from my emergency fund to cover the bachelorette party deposit. I told myself that friendships sometimes require sacrifice,
and that Melissa would do the same for me.
but a small voice in the back of my mind wondered if that was really true. 10 months into the engagement, the bachelorette trip to Tulum came and went. Despite the financial strain, I had an amazing time. For 5 days, I pushed aside my budget concerns and embraced the luxury experience. Melissa seemed genuinely happy to have all her closest friends together.
And that made everything worth it.
Upon returning, I threw myself into finalizing the bridal shower plans. It was scheduled for 2 months before the wedding, giving Melissa time to write thank you notes before the big day.
I had paid deposits to the caterer, the florist, and a local bakery for a custom cake.
I found the perfect vintage teacups and saucers for each guest. I ordered personalized party favors, small jars of honey with custom labels that read meant to be Melissa and James. One Tuesday evening, while I was grading papers, my phone lit up with a notification from the bridesmaids chat. Melissa had sent a link to an article about unique bridal shower ideas.
Just some inspiration.
Smiling face with smiling eyes, she wrote.
I clicked on the link.
The article showcased elaborate bridal showers with themes like breakfast at Tiffany's,
complete with acrobats pouring champagne while hanging from the ceiling, and a night in Paris,
with a replica of the Eiffel Tower as a centerpiece. My heart sank. These were all far beyond the garden tea party I had planned and budgeted for. Was this Melissa's way of telling me she wanted something different? Something more extravagant?
I called her immediately.
Hey, I saw the article you sent, I said, trying to keep my voice casual.
Are you having second thoughts about the tea party theme? Oh no.
Melissa laughed. I was just sharing because I thought it was fun. The tea party will be perfect.
I breathed a sigh of relief.
Good, because everything's coming together beautifully. The conservatory looks amazing with the spring flowers in bloom. You're the best, Claire, she said warmly.
I can't wait to see what you've planned.
The night before the bridal shower,
I could barely sleep from excitement and nervous energy.
months of planning were about to come to fruition. I had taken the day off from school to handle the setup, and everything was ready. The conservatory had been transformed into an elegant garden oasis. White roses and peonies adorned every table. Hand-calligraphed place cards marked each seat. A table filled with vintage teapots and freshly baked pastries waited for the guests.
The morning of the shower,
I arrived early to make sure everything was perfect. The caterers were setting up.
the florist was making final adjustments, and the string quartet was warming up in the corner.
My heart swelled with pride as I looked around. This was exactly what I had envisioned.
Elegant, thoughtful, and personalized for Melissa.
The first guests began to arrive at noon.
Jessica and Taylor came early to help with any last-minute details. They seemed impressed, which gave me a boost of confidence. This is gorgeous, Claire,
Jessica admitted, taking in the flower arrangements and delicate china. You really did an amazing job,
Thanks.
I said, genuinely touched. I wanted it to be special for Melissa. When Zoe and Rachel arrived, they complimented the decor as well, though I noticed them exchanging glances as they surveyed the scene. I pushed away the insecurity that crept into my mind. This day wasn't about me, it was about Melissa. At 12:30, the guest of honor arrived.
Melissa looked stunning in a white sundress, her engagement ring sparkling in the sunlight that streamed through the conservatory glass. I watched her face, eager to see her reaction to all my hard work. She looked around, smiled, and hugged me.
It's lovely, Claire. Thank you. It wasn't the enthusiastic reaction I had hoped for.
But I chalked it up to her being overwhelmed by seeing all 30 guests at once.
The shower progressed as planned. We enjoyed the catered lunch, played a few tasteful bridal games,
And Melissa opened her gifts.
everything was going smoothly, until I overheard the conversation. I was returning from the bathroom when I heard Melissa's voice from just around the corner. She was talking to Zoe and Rachel in hushed tones, not realizing I was within earshot.
It's fine, really.
Melissa was saying.
Claire tried her best. It's just so basic.
Zoe supplied.
Melissa sighed. I know that sounds awful. She's my oldest friend, and I appreciate all her effort.
But you've seen the bridal showers on Instagram these days. This is just so traditional, so predictable,
At least the champagne is good.
Rachel offered, and they all laughed.
I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. Basic. Predictable.
I had poured my heart, soul, and savings into this event. I had spent countless hours ensuring every detail was perfect.
And Melissa thought it was basic? I mean, a tea party? In 2025. Melissa continued. I was hoping for something more unique, you know? Something that would stand out in photos. You can always filter the hell out of it.
Zoe suggested, and they laughed again.
I must have made a sound, because they suddenly stopped talking. I quickly retreated a few steps.
Then walked forward again, pretending I had just left the bathroom.
There's the woman of the hour, I said with forced brightness, feeling my face flush with humiliation.
Melissa's expression shifted instantly to a smile.
But I could see the guilt in her eyes. She knew I had heard. Claire, we were just saying how beautiful everything is, she lied smoothly.
I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. For the remainder of the shower,
I went through the motions, smiling and taking photos, cutting the cake, and thanking guests as they left. But inside I was shattered.
After the last guest departed, only the bridesmaids remained to help clean up.
Melissa hugged me tightly.
Thank you so much for today, she said. Everything was beautiful. I simply nodded, still unable to form words without crying.
Are you okay?
She asked, finally noticing my silence. Just tired, I lied.
Planning this took a lot out of me. Well, you did a fantastic job,
she said, squeezing my arm. And so lucky to have you as my maid of honor. I nodded again, fighting back tears.
She didn't mean it.
She thought my months of work, my financial sacrifice, my thoughtful planning was basic. Too traditional. Not Instagram-worthy. After everyone left, I sat alone in the conservatory, surrounded by the remnants of the shower, half-empty champagne glasses.
Crumpled gift wrap, wilting flowers.
The venue coordinator approached me.
We need to have everything cleared out by 6.
She reminded me gently.
Of course.
I said, starting to gather decorations.
By the way,
I have the final payment for you. I reached for my purse, then paused.
in that moment, something inside me snapped.
Why was I paying thousands of dollars for an event that Melissa had deemed basic? Why was I draining my savings for someone who couldn't even appreciate my efforts? Actually, I said slowly.
There's been a change of plans.
The coordinator looked confused.
What do you mean?
How much of my deposit can I get back if I cancel the wedding reception scheduled for June 15th?
Her eyes widened. The Parker Williams wedding? But that's not your event. Actually, it is.
I said, my voice surprisingly steady.
I'm the one who put down the deposits. My name is on all the contracts. It was true.
In my eagerness to help, I had taken on the responsibility of securing the reception venue.
The same beautiful conservatory,
but with a larger setup for the wedding reception. Melissa and James were supposed to reimburse me.
But with all the other wedding expenses,
they had asked to push that payment until closer to the wedding date. The coordinator looked uncomfortable.
Well,
the contract states that cancellations within 3 months of the event forfeit 50% of the total payment.
You get half back.
Half was better than nothing, and the venue could probably rebook a Saturday in June with no problem.
I'd like to cancel it,
I said, making my decision. I'll send an email to make it official.
That night,
I drafted the cancellation email with shaking hands. What I was doing felt both terrible and satisfying at the same time. I knew it would cause chaos, potential financial loss for Melissa and James,
and likely end our friendship forever.
But the hurt and humiliation were too fresh, too deep.
I pressed send.
Then I blocked Melissa's number, removed myself from the bridesmaids chat, and deactivated my social media accounts. I knew I was being dramatic, but I couldn't face the fallout immediately. I needed time to process my feelings, to decide if I had made a colossal mistake or finally stood up for myself. For 3 days I went to work, taught my third graders, and came home to silence. No wedding planning, no constant messages, no financial stress.
It was both peaceful and excruciating.
On the 4th day there was a pounding on my apartment door. I knew immediately who it was. Taking a deep breath, I opened it.
Melissa stood there, her face blotchy from crying, her eyes wild with anger and disbelief. What did you do?
She demanded, pushing past me into the apartment. Tell me you didn't cancel our wedding venue. I closed the door slowly, steeling myself. I canceled the reception venue, yes.
How could you?
She screamed, her hands shaking. Do you have any idea what you've done? It's impossible to find a venue 2 months before the wedding. Everything is booked.
I'm sorry you're stressed,
I said, surprised by my own calmness. But I think you should look for something less basic than what I had arranged. Something more Instagram-worthy. Her face went pale. You heard me at the shower. Yes, I heard you call the event I spent 6 months planning and thousands of dollars organizing basic
and predictable.
I heard you laugh about it with Zoe and Rachel.
It was just talk, Claire. Just silly, meaningless talk. And left the shower. No, you didn't,
I said quietly.
And that's okay.
You're entitled to your opinion, but I'm entitled to spend my money on things and people who appreciate my efforts.
So this is revenge?
She asked incredulously. You're sabotaging my wedding because your feelings got hurt? When she put it that way, it did sound petty and vindictive. But it was more complicated than that. This isn't just about the shower, I tried to explain.
It's about our entire friendship.
For 12 years, I've been the reliable one, the one who drops everything when you need something, who spends money I don't have to keep up with your lifestyle. And I was happy to do it because I thought our friendship meant as much to you as it does to me. It does, she insisted. No, it doesn't, I said sadly.
If it did,
you wouldn't have mocked me behind my back. You wouldn't have dismissed months of thoughtful planning as basic. You would have seen the love and effort I put into that day, not how it would look on Instagram.
Melissa sank onto my couch,
burying her face in her hands. I can't believe this is happening, she sobbed. Everything is ruined. I felt a pang of guilt watching her cry.
But I stood firm. The venue will refund half of the deposit.
That should help you book something else.
She looked up. mascara streaking down her cheeks. Das, Claire, we need the entire amount. And venues book a year in advance.
There's no way we'll find somewhere decent on such short notice.
Maybe James's beach house in the Hamptons? I suggested.
It's beautiful there in June. She stared at me like I had suggested getting married in a dumpster.
We invited 200 people.
It's not big enough.
We sat in tense silence for a moment.
I trusted you, she finally said, her voice breaking.
You were my best friend. The past tense stung, but I nodded. And I trusted you too. I trusted that you valued our friendship.
Valued me, more than appearances or social media approval.
Melissa stood up abruptly.
I can't talk to you right now. I need to call James and figure out what we're going to do about the venue.
As she headed for the door, I felt a wave of sadness. 12 years of friendship, ending like this. Melissa,
I called after her.
For what it's worth, I am sorry about the venue. I acted out of hurt and anger. She paused at the door but didn't turn around.
If you're really sorry, call and undo the cancellation. I hesitated.
Part of me wanted to fix everything.
To go back to being dependable Claire,
who always came through for Melissa. But another part, a part that had been silenced for too long,
knew that we couldn't simply return to the way things were. I can't do that, I said softly. But I can give you my half of the refunded deposit to help you book somewhere new. She shook her head, opened the door, and left without another word. The following weeks were some of the loneliest of my life. My phone, once constantly buzzing with wedding planning messages, was silent.
I threw myself into my work,
staying late at school to grade papers and prepare lessons. I avoided places where I might run into our mutual friends.
One evening,
as I was walking home from school,
I saw Rachel coming out of a coffee shop.
She spotted me before I could duck away.
Claire,
she called, approaching hesitantly.
Can we talk?
I nodded, bracing myself for her anger. We found a bench in a nearby park and sat down. Melissa is devastated, she began. They've had to downsize the wedding significantly. James's parents are letting them use their country club, but it's much smaller than the conservatory.
I felt a mixture of guilt and vindication. I'm sorry it's been stressful for them.
Rachel studied me for a moment. You know, I owe you an apology, she said, surprising me.
You deal. At the shower when Melissa was, well, when she said those things. I laughed.
I didn't stop her or defend you.
And that was wrong. I hadn't expected this.
Thank you for saying that. The thing is, Rachel continued, I was jealous. You and Melissa have this history, this bond, that Zoe and I could never touch. And you did such an amazing job with that shower. It was elegant and thoughtful and so perfectly Melissa. Not the Instagram version she thinks she wants, but the real Melissa who loves flowers and vintage things and thoughtful touches. I felt tears welling up.
Then why did she hate it so much? Rachel sighed. She didn't hate it.
She's just caught up in this social media fantasy of what her wedding should be.
And honestly, I think she's a little jealous of you too. Jealous? I laughed incredulously. Of what?
Of your authenticity. Your life has meaning, Claire. You shape young minds every day.
You create real connections.
Melissa posts pictures of designer coffees and gets validation from strangers online. Deep down, I think she knows which one matters more. We sat in silence for a moment, watching people pass by. What you did with the venue was wrong, Rachel finally said.
But I understand why you did it.
I nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words. I know it was wrong.
I acted out of hurt.
But it also felt like the first time I stood up for myself in our friendship.
Have you talked to her since that day at your apartment?
No, I admitted.
I'm not sure what to say. Rachel stood up.
Well, if you want my advice, say anything. Friendships like yours and Melissa's, 12 years of history, they don't come along every day.
Even when they hit rough patches.
After Rachel left, I sat on that bench for a long time, thinking about Melissa, our friendship, and the choices I had made. I had been hurt and humiliated, yes, but had canceling the venue accomplished anything positive? Or had I just ensured that our friendship couldn't be salvaged? That night I wrote Melissa an email. Not quite an apology, but an opening.
I miss you. Can we talk?
3 simple sentences, but they took an hour to write and even longer to send. But once they were sent, I felt lighter somehow. Melissa's response came the next morning. Coffee at our old spot? Saturday at 2
Our old spot.
was a small cafe near the apartment we had shared right after college.
It was where we had celebrated job offers, mourned breakups, and planned our futures over countless lattes and pastries.
Saturday arrived with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I got to the cafe early and claimed our favorite table by the window. When Melissa walked in, she looked different somehow, tired,
but with a calmness I hadn't seen in months of frantic wedding planning. She sat down across from me, and for a moment neither of us spoke.
"I ordered you a vanilla latte," I finally said, pushing the cup toward her, "and a chocolate croissant."
She smiled faintly. "You remembered. 12 years of friendship. Some things stick."
She took a sip of her latte, then set it down carefully.
"I owe you an apology, Claire. What I said at the shower was cruel and ungrateful."
"You put so much thought and effort into making that day special for me, and I couldn't see past my own stupid ideas about what would look good in photos." I hadn't expected her to apologize first. "Thank you for saying that. The truth is," she continued, "I got caught up in this fantasy version of what my wedding should be.
I was comparing everything to these curated Instagram posts,
forgetting that those aren't real.
They're styled and filtered and fake."
I nodded, understanding completely. "But," she added, her voice hardening slightly, "what you did with the venue was also wrong. It was vindictive and hurtful." "I know," I admitted. "I was hurt and angry, but that doesn't justify what I did. I'm truly sorry."
"Melissa." She nodded, accepting my apology. "We managed to book the country club at James's parents' golf course.
It's actually going to be more intimate now, just 100 guests instead of 200.
And honestly,
I'm relieved.
The whole thing was becoming this monster I couldn't control."
"I'm glad it worked out," I said sincerely. "James and I also decided to put the extra money toward a down payment on a house instead of spending it all on one day," she added. "That's a smart decision." We sipped our coffees in silence for a moment.
"Can I ask you something?"
Melissa finally said.
"Of course."
"Were you unhappy in our friendship before all this happened?" The question caught me off guard. "Not unhappy exactly, but sometimes I felt
less than.
like I wasn't quite keeping up with your life.
And sometimes I felt taken for granted." She nodded slowly.
"I think I knew that on some level, but it was easier to just expect you to always be there, supporting me, rather than examining how I was treating you in return."
"I should have spoken up sooner instead of letting resentment build."
I acknowledged. Melissa reached across the table and tentatively placed her hand over mine. "Can we start over?"
"Not ignore what happened, but try to build something healthier." "I'd like that,"
I said, squeezing her hand. "Good," she said, looking relieved.
"Because there's something else I wanted to ask you." "What's that?"
"Will you still be my maid of honor? I understand if you don't want to after everything, but no one knows me like you do, Claire."
"No one has been there for me the way you have all these years."
I felt tears threatening again.
"Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything,"
she said firmly. "And I promise no more bridezilla behavior. No more worrying about what looks good for Instagram.
Just a real celebration with the people who matter most." 2 months later, I stood beside Melissa at the country club,
watching her marry James under a simple floral arch overlooking the golf course.
The ceremony was intimate and genuine. No string quartet.
No elaborate decorations, just heartfelt vows and tears of joy from both families.
The reception was held in the club's dining room,
which we had decorated with simple centerpieces of wildflowers and candles. The cake was made by a local bakery instead of the famous Manhattan patisserie originally planned. The DJ played all our favorite songs from college,
and we danced until our feet hurt.
At one point, Melissa pulled me aside, her face flushed from dancing. "Thank you," she said, hugging me tightly.
"For what?"
"For calling me out when I needed it.
For making me remember what really matters."
She gestured around the room, at James laughing with his groomsmen,
at her parents slow dancing in the corner,
at our friends taking silly photos in the makeshift photo booth.
"This is perfect.
This is real." And I almost missed it because I was too busy trying to create some magazine-worthy fantasy. I hugged her back, feeling the last remnants of hurt and resentment fade away. That's what best friends are for.
To call each other out when we're being idiots.
She laughed.
And to forgive each other afterward.
Later that night, as the reception wound down,
I found myself standing outside on the terrace, looking up at the stars.
Rachel joined me, handing me a glass of champagne. You know, she said thoughtfully.
In a weird way, canceling that venue might have been the best thing you could have done for Melissa. I looked at her questioningly.
It forced her to reevaluate what was important, Rachel explained.
I've known her for years, but I've never seen her this genuinely happy and present.
Usually she's halfway to the next thing,
Always chasing some elusive perfect moment instead of enjoying the real ones.
I watched through the window as Melissa and James swayed together on the dance floor,
Foreheads touching.
completely lost in each other.
Sometimes the best friends are the ones brave enough to tell us uncomfortable truths,
Rachel continued.
even when it costs them something to do it.
I thought about the past few months, the pain, the growth, the reconciliation. I think we're both better friends now, I said. More honest, more appreciative of each other. To friendship, Rachel said, raising her glass. The real messy, complicated kind, not the basic version. I laughed at her choice of words and clinked my glass against hers.
To real friendship.
As I drove home that night, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here.
What had started as a hurtful comment
And an impulsive act of revenge had somehow transformed into an opportunity for growth and deeper connection.
Melissa and I had both made mistakes,
But we had also found the courage to acknowledge them, to apologize, and to forge a new path forward.
the truth was, I had been just as caught up in my role as the perfect,
Accommodating friend as Melissa had been in her vision of the perfect Instagram-worthy wedding. We had both been playing parts rather than being authentic with each other. It took a crisis to break those patterns and allow us to see each other.
and ourselves more clearly. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Melissa.
Already on her honeymoon in Italy. Thank you for everything, Claire.
For the good, the bad, and even the ugly.
But especially for being real with me when no one else would. I'm so lucky to have you as my best friend. Yes, the photos from the wedding are amazingly you and basic. Turns out real joy photographs better than any stage setup ever could. I smiled, typing back.
Enjoy Italy.
Drink wine, eat pasta, and don't you dare post a single photo until you fully experienced every moment first. Her response came quickly. Deal. And when I get back, let's talk about finding you someone special. You deserve your own happily ever after too, you know. For the first time in our friendship, the suggestion didn't make me feel lacking or behind. Instead, I felt a warm sense of possibility. Whatever the future held, whether it included a partner for me or not, I knew that I had learned the value of authenticity,
Of speaking my truth, and of expecting the same respect I gave to others.
Sometimes it takes losing something to understand its true worth. Melissa and I had nearly lost our friendship,
But in rebuilding it, we had created something stronger, healthier, and more genuine than before.
and that was worth more than any picture-perfect bridal shower could ever be.
My name is Claire,
And this is the story of how I canceled my best friend's wedding venue.
and somehow ended up saving our friendship in the process.
It wasn't pretty, it wasn't perfect, but like all real relationships, it was worth fighting for. And in the end, that's the least basic thing of all.